Video games. A highly complex form of art with the unique ability to draw players into an imaginary world. They allow you to explore all sorts of fantasies, from being a brutal demon-slaying badass to popping colorful balloons using an army of dart-throwing monkeys. Some games tell a gripping story, while others let you jump into a quick round for some arcade-like fun. No matter how different some games might be, they all have one thing in common. Playing a game should be fun. I'd argue a game can be fun to play without any story at all. A strong foundation of well-executed game mechanics and a balanced game loop is all you need for a game to be enjoyable to play. A story can serve as a cherry on top. It can be used to explain why the gameplay is the way it is and gives the game character. In my opinion, bad gameplay can be saved by a great story, but a bad story is unlikely to ruin a great game. When I started developing my own game, which is a movement-based roguelike game about bow and arrow combat, I didn't consider a story to be important. I focused purely on creating engaging game mechanics, trying out new ideas and trashing things that didn't work. But I'm now at a point where I've figured out the broad gameplay, and the next big thing is establishing a fun roguelike game loop. I decided now is the best time to begin laying out a story for the game. By story, I don't mean a linear narrative the player goes through, but rather the world the game is set in, as well as a backstory to explain what your goal is and why. My game is set in the Void, an endless space with floating rocks and water scattered throughout. The Void is inhabited by all kinds of creatures and species, one of which you, as the player character, are a part of. Deposited along rocks, you can find these shiny blue crystals, which are a powerful source of energy. While all Void creatures feast on these crystals, your species found a way to harvest the energy more efficiently and use it to construct power-inducing fragments, abilities, and weapons. You play as an Arbalest, whose duty it is to explore the depths of the Void, collecting crystals along the way, and hopefully getting back home safe. But harvesting these crystals doesn't come without a challenge. Other Void creatures want to keep these crystals to themselves, protecting them at all cost. The deeper you go, the more crystals and enemies you will encounter. That's the core premise of Arbalest. Yep, the game has got a name now, finally. I've left out some details for the sake of simplicity and because some aspects are not fully worked out yet. I have never in my life written a real story before and have no clue what I'm actually doing. So if you have any ideas or feedback, let me know. So, how does this all translate into a gameplay loop? Or maybe first of all, what even is a gameplay loop? A gameplay loop is made up of game mechanics and describes the stages of gameplay the player goes through when playing. A mechanic could for example be firing your gun, using an ability, or activating a teleporter. Mechanics are actions the player can take, or ways things in the game interact with each other. A game loop could look something like this. Enter a level, kill enemies, collect some loot, activate and finish a teleporter event, go to the next level and repeat. In the case of my own game, I have settled upon the following loop. By falling down, you enter a level. Scattered around the level, you can find objects of interest, like crystal deposits, loot containers, and more. Trying to mine a crystal aggravates creatures in its proximity and spawns some more. Only after clearing out all creatures spawned by the crystal, you can collect the crystal shards. These shards serve as a currency to buy fragments from loot containers. Fragments can be placed on either your player character or on one of your arrows to enhance it in some powerful way. At any time, the player can simply fall down to enter the next level. The further down you go, the more powerful enemies become and the bigger the crystal deposits get. In some levels, you might find an extraction beacon you can use to get back home, ending the extraction. The crystal shards you've successfully brought back enable you to unlock permanent progression like new abilities, arrow types, or fragments. Let's take a quick look at all the changes the game has been through, starting with the enemy creatures. At the moment, there are 4 enemy types. The Chaser follows the player in water and attacks when in close range. The Sniper fires following projectiles from a distance. The Bomber drops bombs when above the player. And the Leaper has the ability to quickly charge towards its target. Creating good enemy behavior has turned out to be much more of a challenge than initially expected. Since levels not only contain walls but also water, makes pathfinding non-trivial to implement. Normally, navigating enemies to the player is simple. There are areas an enemy can and can't go. To find a valid path from A to B, a simple implementation of the A-star pathfinding algorithm does the trick. Now, in my game there are 2 types of areas you can be in, water and air. Whether there is a valid path towards the player depends on whether the enemy is able to move in said area. Not only that, but some enemy types should be able to traverse gaps by jumping across them. And even when an enemy is not able to reach the player, it should get as close as possible. I still haven't quite figured out most of these kinds of edge cases, but rather have focused on coding a custom navigation mesh implementation that will hopefully enable me to adjust it to cover all sorts of scenarios later on. There is one question that has been on my mind since I got the idea for the game. How should player health be handled? I know this question sounds stupidly simple, like give the player a health bar, make enemies deal damage, when health is 0, it's game over. While that's easy enough, the real question is, how should the player be able to restore health? One possible way would be to make health passively regenerate. Say when the player doesn't take damage for X amount of seconds, health slowly fills back up. This method is straightforward and easy to implement and has the benefit of being quite forgiving. The player will always have enough health for the next enemy encounter. On the flip side, it encourages a slightly passive playstyle. Get shot, hide behind cover, wait a bit, that's it. Another way would be to treat health as a kind of resource the player has to earn. This could range from buying it in a shop to smashing the skull of a healthy piñata in the form of a demon. The Dark Souls games even go a step further, where health and healing potions are an essential part of progression. Of course, this approach has some downsides too. When health is low, the player might feel the need to play passively and slowly to avoid taking damage, which depending on the game might be boring. How a game handles health heavily impacts the way it is played. This entire topic is so interesting, I bet it would make for a great video. Oh wait. For my game, I've decided to go with the latter option, like lots of other roguelike games. Personally, I enjoy the thrill of being at critical health and narrowly avoiding death until the next health stock up. It makes health feel like a precious resource, increasing the stakes of every enemy encounter. Throughout the game, you will find these vitality siphons that, when activated, restore a chunk of health. Each activation costs shards, slowly increasing in price. This encourages players to find more crystal deposits and in turn fight more enemies when at low health. It also opens the door to future game mechanics, like paying for certain stuff with your health. In general, this makes health and especially health upgrades more important. And yeah, that's pretty much all for now. Thank you very much for watching.